5:06 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to your friends. Hope you're doing well. Thank the Lord. It is Friday, so the headline from CNN is actually my headline, too. One of my many headlines this morning, and that is that you have, like all things, Republicans and Democrats, of course, they were all in the same hearing regarding the damage assessments to Iran's nuclear facilities. And Republicans disagree with Democrats. Democrats disagree with Republicans. You have the likes of Bernie Sanders and other Democrats saying, no, they didn't get all of it. They only set back Iran for, a couple of months. And then you have the Republicans who are saying, oh, no, same hearing, saying that Iran's nuclear ambitions were set back for like 15, 20 years. So it's a lot of the same. Now, coming up at 7:06, we do have Marsha Blackburn, Senator Marsha Blackburn. She'll be joining us, and she's going to give us her assessment. I'm pretty sure that her opinion will be the exact opposite of, the Democrats, like Bernie Sanders. So here on WTN, Nashville's Morning News yesterday, we carried for you a good portion of the press conference by Pete Hegseth and, of course, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane. This all came down yesterday. We aired a lot of it. Then, of course, all the other shows aired it as well. So I don't necessarily need to air that audio again. But one of the things that you did hear was this.
Not only does our own intelligence say that, but also the Iranian foreign minister has said that. We saw Israel conclude the same thing based on their own intelligence. We also had the United Nations say that as well. So I think the only other time the United Nations, Israel, Iran, and the United States has agreed on something is that the sky is blue. But they all agree that Iran's nuclear facilities were completely demolished.
That, of course, Press Secretary, White House Press Secretary Karoline Levitt. Now, the question is, who leaked it? There's a lot of questions regarding the bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities. Number one is how much damage was actually done. I believe that they were obliterated just based on what I saw yesterday and based on what I know about these big bombs that they used, the bunker buster bombs. So that's number one. Number two, the precision, the preciseness, the precision of the attack. That's number two. And number three, as Karoline Levitt said, and I said yesterday, and I've been saying for quite some time, you have all of these different entities that are saying that these facilities were destroyed. But that's number one. That's the first question. Next question is, who leaked it? Who leaked that low-confidence Department of Defense intelligence report to the likes of CNN and the New York Times? That is a big question that everybody wants to know, including Karoline Levitt.
Leaking top secret classified intelligence is a crime, and people need to be held accountable for that crime.
Mm-hmm. Again, that is Karoline Levitt. And so now they're making the case that they will be limiting the information that Congress receives because of these leaks. And I totally get that. I don't have an issue with that at all, because it is totally obvious, at least it is totally obvious to me, that there are members of Congress who simply cannot handle the information. They can't handle their Trump derangement syndrome. They've got to do anything and everything they can to try to prove Donald Trump wrong. And so there's a number of things here. Number one, did it come from Congress, or did it come from the Department of Defense, the intelligence community? We simply don't know just yet. But
this administration wants to ensure that classified intelligence is not ending up in irresponsible hands, and that people who have the privilege of viewing this top secret classified information are being responsible with it. And unfortunately, clearly, someone who had their hands on this, and it was a very few people, few number of people in our government who saw this report, that person was irresponsible with it, and we need to get to the bottom of it, and we need to strengthen that process to protect our national security and protect the American public.
All right, so you have that. The hunt is on for the leaker, and I've got a little bit more on that coming up. But remember that President Trump, he is now threatening to sue the New York Times and CNN for publishing those articles saying the attacks were not as effective as Donald Trump said. This is from the New York Times itself. In a letter to the Times, A personal lawyer for the president said the newspaper's article had it damaged Mr. Trump's reputation and demanded that the news organization retract and apologize for the written piece, which the letter described as false, defamatory, and unpatriotic. The New York Times, in response, and again, this is from the New York Times, said in a response yesterday they rejected Donald Trump's demands, noting that the Trump administration officials had subsequently confirmed the existence of the report issued by the Defense Intelligence Agency and its findings. So the New York Times says there's no retraction needed, and there's also not going to be any apology. They say no apology will be forthcoming. They say we told the truth to the best of our ability. We will continue to do so. So we'll have to see where that goes. The White House, and listen, I don't want to agree with the enemy, but the report did exist. But the problem is that the New York Times didn't put it in its full context, because the full context, as Pete Hegseth laid out and Dan Kane laid out yesterday, this was a day one, hours in, low confidence level or low level confidence report. And you talk about how they cherry-picked information to make the attacks on Iran look, relatively speaking, insignificant in the overall scheme of things. And so now the White House is zeroing in on who leaked this. Now, it's interesting because, number one, you've got a number of different leaks, right? So you've got maybe someone from Congress, Democrats, no doubt, leaking it to someone in the media. And the Trump administration, they have focused in on a reporter. I wonder if Joan Jones knows, because you spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C. Do you know this Natasha Bertrand?
Oh, yes. I don't know her personally, but I do know of her work. And you can actually look it up. She has worked in all of the relevant left media places. She's been at NBC, MSNBC,
and by the way, she's a Ruski. Her name is Natasha.
Yes. Natasha. Yes.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But people are saying that she is a fake news spreader. Listen to this.
Natasha Bertrand of CNN, who has done this in the past. In 2020, it was Natasha Bertrand who had 51 intelligence analysts falsely lie to her, but she still put it on paper for some reason, that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation. Also in 2020, this same reporter, Natasha Bertrand, wrote that a top intel agency ruled out the man-made lab leak theory of the coronavirus origins. This reporter wrote a lie from the intelligence community to seek a narrative she wanted to prove. Also in 2024, Bertrand pushed the suckers and losers hoax. She also pushed the fine people hoax, which was taking the president's words purposely out of context. And then last October, and I believe this is notable, Natasha Bertrand published an article in Politico from the intelligence agency. She said that John Ratcliffe was speaking without any evidence when he said Iran was attempting to undermine President Trump's presidential campaign. And then we, of course, found out that was absolutely true. And so this is a reporter who has been unfortunately used by people who dislike Donald Trump in this government to push fake and false narratives. She should be ashamed of herself. And that's not what reporting is. And this week we saw this same reporter being used to push a fake narrative to try to undermine the president of the United States, and more importantly, the brave fighter pilots who conducted one of the most successful operations in United States history.
So, there is a lot there, Joan. That's a minute 26 of all of the transgressions of Natasha Bertrand.
And I love that Karoline called her out by name.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was like the greatest hits of Trump hoaxes, right?
Yes.
Suckers and losers, good people on both sides. Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinfo, and COVID didn't come from the Chinese lab. You look at Trump hoaxes and fake news over the past, 8-9 years, and she had a hand in the spread of every single one, Natasha Bertrand. And so, I don't know. I'm with you, Joan. I like the fact that that Karoline Levitt focused on Natasha Bertrand. There's a lot of others, by the way. We'll talk about this. And by the way, I don't know if you've noticed, but the mainstream media, the White House elite press corps, they are circling the wagons, trying to come to the defense of Natasha Bertrand. But again, there's a lot more fake news Trump hoax peddlers out there in Washington, D.C. than just Natasha Bertrand. By the way, they are the ones also coming to her defense. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more straight ahead. 5:15, time to check the roads on WTN.
This morning in Haines, this is in Davidson County, Whites Creek Pike at Night Drive South. Watch out for a crash involving some injuries there. No real delays this morning as I'm watching the maps. Everything looks pretty good as you make your way into Nashville at this moment. Traffic every 10 minutes every morning on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right, very good, Joan. Thank you. Today, I've got a Friday high of around 90 degrees, scattered thunderstorms and rain possible. Saturday, a high near 90, scattered thunderstorms and rain. Same deal on Sunday, high in the upper 80s, scattered thunderstorms as well, and some rain. I thought, Joan, it was going to be a good pool weekend, but it doesn't sound like it.
Well, look.
There's all kinds of rain expected. You can't go. Do you know what's the funniest thing ever? Is when Amy and I were on the cruise, and we were, in the pool, and it is hotter than Hades out there on the pool deck, and everybody's in the pool. Everybody's wet, and it starts to rain, and everybody just starts running towards cover because it starts to rain just a little bit. It's like, and so then, me and Riker, we had the pool to ourselves, and we're out there like, just having a good old time because finally we have the pool to ourselves because, it's raining, but everybody else is running for, the bars or whatever it is that they went. So anyway, we'll have to see what happens.
They were probably fearful of a little bit of lightning, right?
There was no lightning.
Okay.
Don't stand up for the weak. Come on, Joan. I'm just kidding. Let's see here. Yeah, so President Trump called this Natasha Bertrand. Did you see what he posted? Called her a dog, or at least he said that she should be thrown out like a dog. This was Donald Trump. Natasha Bertrand should be fired from CNN. I watched her for 3 days doing fake news. She should be immediately reprimanded and then thrown out like a dog. She lied on the laptop from hell story, and now she lied on the nuclear site story, attempting to destroy our Patriot pilots by making them look bad when, in fact, they did a great job and hit pay dirt. Total obliteration, the president says. She should not be allowed to work at fake news CNN. It's people like her who destroyed the reputation of a once great network. Her slant was so obviously negative. Besides, she doesn't have what it takes to be an on-camera correspondent. Not even close. Fire Natasha is what President Trump said.
Oh, it's a hashtag. Fire Natasha.
Fire Natasha. I have not seen her on camera. Does she not have what it takes to be a on-camera correspondent?
I mean, she's fine,
I mean, she's fetching for a Ruski.
She's fetching.
CNN, by the way, is...
Let's drag out the 1950s word, shall we?
You know what? Can I just tell you something? I way overslept because I OD'd on melatonin again last night.
Oh, no, you did not.
I sure did. And the first, 60 seconds of this radio broadcast proves it, moving right along. So CNN is standing by Natasha. This is Brian Stelter.
That's right. Natasha was one of 3 bylines, 3 reporters with 3 separate sources on the initial Tuesday story. And within a number of hours, we saw the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press, Fox News, and other outlets all match that reporting. So when Karoline Levitt talks about one leaker and claiming the FBI will find that one leaker, I think it's important to note that these stories from CNN and other outlets were sourced to multiple anonymous sources. And there was not just one reporter on this story. There were many reporters on this story.
So let's not forget, and I said this at the open, let's not forget there's a lot of folks within the Department of Defense and in the department, the intelligence agencies, who are not fans of Donald Trump. They're not fans of Pete Hegseth. Remember when Hegseth was nominated and then confirmed as defense secretary, there were investigations or articles that talked about how they didn't respect Pete Hegseth, and people within the defense agencies did not respect not only Pete Hegseth, but also, of course, Donald Trump. Couldn't stand him. And so this could very well be a coordinated attack, right? You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. So you've got people within the intelligence agencies that could have passed this low-level, no confidence, day one, hours in report. They could have passed it to this Natasha. And then, of course, what would happen is she would report on it. And it's like, again, you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. A group of anti-Trump people in the intelligence agencies, part of what they do, of course, is they cherry pick information to give to anti-Trump reporters who then post it and then print the information as well.
Natasha does have an outstanding reputation, a great history of reporting. So I think those petty personal attacks from the White House podium, they reveal more about the White House than they do about CNN or any other news outlet in this case.
So, by the way, we now have, Joan, a new Natasha Bertrand theme song. If you want to go ahead and play that, KGB. That'd be. In case you don't know, this is the old Soviet Union national anthem.
Yeah.
All right. So whenever Natasha does a report on CNN, they should just, play this when she comes up. Because she's
Gotta say it's catchy.
a Ruski.
As a Russian myself, this it's a pretty catchy song.
It is a catchy song, isn't it?
It works.
Makes you want to stand at attention.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, now just so we're clear, I actually don't know if she's not from Russia. She can't be from Russia. There's no way. Is she from Russia? I mean, it's a Russian name, but she's not. She's probably born in like North Carolina. Can you check and see where Natasha has been, where she was born from? Natasha Bertrand. I got to write her name down because I keep forgetting it. Natasha Bertrand.
Looking at her social media. Oh, I'm sorry. She has a wiki, by the way.
Sure.
It doesn't
She's
say.
gone
It
to
looks
Vassar College and the London School of Economics. How
but
interesting
it doesn't
is
say
that?
where she was born. It goes right into her
Oh,
career
come
page.
on.
I'm not even kidding.
Somebody's got to grok this.
Okay, hold on.
Wouldn't it be funny if she was actually born in Moscow? I mean, it doesn't get much better if she was born in Moscow.
She joined CNN in 2021.
Yeah. All right. Well.
But yeah, and by the way,
Yes.
she earned an Emmy for her breaking news coverage for the Russia invasion of Ukraine and another one for her coverage of the Gaza war. She has just been everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. By the way, Jason says, I'm only a mere peasant listening on the radio, but I would assume that KGB is standing up with his hand on his heart as he was playing the Russian national anthem.
You want to hear something even more sketchy? Mm-hmm. So I'm looking through multiple IMDb's and stuff like that, and all I get is birthplace, United States. That's all I'm getting. I'm not getting an actual
That's
location.
weird.
Even famous birthdays, like there's those websites that actually show you exact info. It doesn't. It just says United States.
All right. Well, now this does look a little sketchy.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just kidding about the whole, Russian thing, but
It says who she is dated, but it is where she was born.
It says she was born. No, I asked Grok, and Grok says she was born in New York.
okay. Well, there you go.
That's a little. Again, that just seems almost too good to be true.
Yeah, but was she born? Was she born in the Russian district in New York? I'll settle for that. I don't even
Good
know.
question,
I don't know if
Dan.
New York even has a Russian district or whatever.
I gotta ask Putin a question when I get back for debrief.
There you go. All right, Joan Jones, 525. What's coming up at 5:30?
Yeah, got another really hot and sticky day ahead, and the Supreme Court is getting all the attention today. We'll tell you why. That and more coming up here at 5:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
537, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to your friends. Joan,
Yes.
I heard you reporting on what looked like fireballs or asteroids plummeting to Earth.
Yes.
So have you seen the videos?
I did. Well, I saw some of the
have.
still photos. Yeah. Did they look cool?
Follow me on X at Dan Manda Show. I just posted several videos of these, I don't know what you call them, meteors, asteroids. I have no idea what you call them,
It's
but
space junk.
space junk. Well, no, because they're rocks.
Yeah, well,
So
yes.
junk is like metal and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, all across the southeast, right? And people
Southeastern
are freaking
states.
out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So they were north in South Carolina, in Georgia, here in Tennessee, of course, also Alabama. So all those states watched this thing or these things fall out of the sky yesterday. And it was during the daytime. So it must have been pretty big if you could still see it.
Yes. And do they know, like, did they hit the earth? I would think that if they actually hit the earth, we would have known about it. I mean,
Well, yeah, there's one family in Georgia that said a rock fell through their ceiling, like right through the roof, through the ceiling and into their living room. And they had pictures of it.
do you think that insurance will cover that, or is that like an act of God?
That's an act of God.
Is it really an act of God? Like,
I think
seriously,
so.
like insurance won't cover it?
I think so. I mean, yeah.
That's just wrong.
So we just had a problem with our roof, and it was because of wind.
Mm-hmm.
And the insurance company said, nice try, but we're not covering it.
Wow.
Because it's an act of God. Mm-hmm. So I think this space rock probably falls in the same category.
Insurance companies suck. Can I just say that?
They do.
Insurance companies suck.
They cover everything, but wind is like something they will not touch.
All right. Well, luckily
Crazy.
nobody was hurt.
Right.
All right. Did you see this story? Gun-toting woman, 64 years old. She's in Houston. She walks onto a busy Texas highway and sits down a lawn chair and just sits there in the middle of traffic. Did you see
With a
that
gun.
story? She had a gun to her head.
Oh, to her head.
Yeah. She walks out into the middle of the highway, sits down in a lawn chair, and she's got a gun. And she had it on her, obviously, and she kept pointing it to her head, her mouth, her ear, and so forth. And she had apparently a 38. And they had to close traffic for like hours, like 5 hours. Traffic. And this was like big news in Houston. And I don't know. I mean, clearly she was mentally ill. Luckily, she was able to, and the videos all over the socials were incredible because, you know, there were traffic accidents when she first came out. And then they had to stop traffic both sides of the highway for, again, hours. They finally were able to get a hold of the woman's daughter. They brought, you know, a negotiator in there and the whole thing. They finally got a hold of the woman's daughter, who was able to talk her out of doing anything foolish. And she gave up the gun and the lawn chair, and she has been transported to a hospital for evaluation.
That's really sad.
It is sad. I mean, you get so angry and frustrated over all these folks who, you know, the activists who will stop highway traffic, and they do all of their stupidity, gluing themselves to the concrete, all that kind of stuff. I saw this story, and I thought it was one of those stories, but obviously it's not. It's a story about someone who is clearly mentally ill, and so now again, luckily she's okay. But yeah, that's one of those stories where you see the traffic was backed up for hours, and it's like, you know, you think the worst is going to happen, and luckily she, again, it looks like anyway, she's going to be okay. Now, Mandami, we have a Mandami update. Now, this is the guy, of course, everybody knows, this is the guy who could quite possibly be the next mayor of New York. And now all of these videos are coming out, and I want to play an audio piece for you because this guy is Zoran Mamdani. And he is a democratic socialist. And this is what he says about violence. We all know how violent New York is, right?
Oftentimes, we've even found as legislators, when we go into these courts, the term violent crime is even used when people are stealing packages. Violent crime is even used when people are accused of burglary and there happens to be a housing unit in that same dwelling. So violence is an artificial construction. And we have to be very clear that what is happening here with these district attorneys, that is violence. That is violence of the highest degree.
So the knockout game, which was rampant in New York, is not violence. gang shootings and gangs taking over neighborhoods, that's not violence, of course. And the illegal aliens that are doing horrible things to women and children in New York, that's not violence either. No. Violence is an artificial construct, and it's actually the cops and the DA. They're the actual perpetrators of violence in New York. And you got these people out there they're woo, yeah, way to go, Mandami, yeah. So now what I absolutely love is the Democrat Party. And they are freaking out. Like, they don't know how to deal with this guy. By the way, also noting the violence in New York. How about the folks that have been pushed in front of trains? That is still going on in New York. In the last year, we've had a couple of people literally set on fire in the subway system. All of that, though, according to the guy who very well could be the next mayor of New York, that is an artificial construct. But I love how he just blows off violence, right? As well, it's the district attorneys and the cops that are violent, and the people applaud. So the more that you get to know this guy, Zoran Mamdani, the more you realize the Democrats, there's a reason why some of them are running away from this guy. And he, of course, again, Democratic Socialist.
I think it means that we are ready in the most expensive city in the United States to have 5 boroughs that New Yorkers can actually afford. And this entire race was about the question of affordability. And ultimately, I have run a campaign that speaks about the tools that city government actually has to deliver that affordability in the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the world. And it's time that we have a mayoral administration that follows through and actually delivers that.
You know, it's interesting because it all sounds so reasonable, doesn't it? People can't afford to live. Let's make it affordable so that they can. But the way to do that isn't giving stuff away or city-controlled stores or socialism or defunding the police, which is exactly what this guy does and what he wants to do. Or, by the way, his rampant anti-Semitism and his war against Israel, his financial war against Israel. So you won't be shocked to hear that Jerry Nadler, by the way, the stinkiest person in Congress, Jerry Nadler and Bernie Sanders have both said that they are excited for his win. He was asked how he defines what he is. He said, what exactly is a democratic socialist?
I think of the words of Dr. King, who decades ago said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism. There must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And it gets to the heart of the matter, which is inequality. And my belief that every New Yorker should have what they need to live a dignified life. It shouldn't be something that they can be priced out of. And that's why at the heart of our campaign is this focus on freezing the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants, making the slowest buses in the country fast and free.
All right, so affordability is a big issue everywhere. And by the way, part of it's either an opportunity or concern, depending on who you talk to, right? So people like Bernie Sanders and Jerry Nadler, they're saying, oh, this is great. We can nationalize what this guy stands for. Price controls are not the answer. You talk to anybody who owns property or landlords or whatever, and it's impossible to maintain a building if you don't have the money to do it. So if you've got price controls, if you've got rent controls, and it's been the same rent for, 10 years, and all of a sudden the air conditioning breaks on a day like today in all of these different apartments, well, guess what? With price controls, you don't have the money to fix them. And that's a big problem. So, yes, like it or not, housing is impacted by the market. It just is. Artificially freezing rents, while it is done in parts of the country, it does create a ton of problems. It causes supply issues because nobody wants to move because they've got great rent. And we used to have some of these neighborhoods in Los Angeles. So if you have to move to New York, it's really hard to find apartments because people live in them forever because they've got that low rent. Rents typically are higher, they say, for uncontrolled apartments because landlords have to make up for that income somehow. Oh, and by the way, the best part of all of this is that, do you know who actually ends up benefiting from price controls? It's the people who are more well off. They found that in a study. I want to say it was the Brookings Institute that studied this in New York, because there are places that do have these rent freezes. And ultimately, it is the people who are of higher income that ultimately end up benefiting from all of this. And then, of course, you do have the mass exodus of people from New York as well.
There are in the country about 1,200, people who are just wealthy beyond anything, right? And in 25 years ago, there were only about 40 of them. Now there are 1,200 people who are worth more than $1 billion and much more than that. That has to be addressed at some point because they're not paying the taxes that the rest of us are paying.
Absolutely, and I think it gets to the heart of the matter, which is that there is enough money for a life of dignity for all people. It's just a question of whether we have the political will to ensure that that money is being spent on delivering that dignity.
Are they replacing, Joan, are they replacing the word socialism with life of dignity?
Oh.
Have you noticed that?
Maybe.
Like
no, I haven't.
He keeps using, and I've heard others do this as well. Well, the conservatives, they don't want people to have a life of dignity, but we do. And apparently stealing from one group of people and giving it to another group of people is, supposed to be offering them a life of dignity. Do you know what a life of dignity is? A life of dignity is getting a job, and a job that's good enough to pay your bills and be able to pay your own bills as opposed to stealing from other people, which is exactly what I believe that socialism is. A 2019 Brookings Institution report noted that in cities like New York, wealthier households often hold rent-controlled apartments, crowding out low-income renters. So this guy is just basically what he's doing is he's spewing talking points. And by the way, I don't mean to pull this stat out yet again, but in that one audio bite, what can be done about all these, rich billionaires that are around the world? It's like, well, those are the people that create wealth for other people by giving them jobs and funding research and these kinds of things. So I'm obviously not one of those people that's going to castigate the rich because they've been able to make something of their lives and make money. And I don't want to pull this stat out yet again, but the top 10% paid 73% of federal income taxes here in America. So making the, quote, rich pay their fair share, it's a great talking point, which is exactly what this guy does. He speaks in talking points, but it's not reality. And again, they're also job creators. They do help others obtain wealth. But again, don't let the facts get in the way of a great talking point. Did you hear what John Fetterman said? John Fetterman said that this guy, Zoran Mamdani, it is like Christmas in July for the GOP, according to John Fetterman. Now, you know why he says that? Because really the Republicans have an opportunity really to tie this guy to the Democrat Party. And that's why you have a lot of people who are looking at everything that he stands for, because what he stands for, most Americans find repulsive. He wants inmates to be housed based on self-declared gender identity. He wants to have 50% of the state's advertising budget, New York, to be spent with media outlets based on race, ethnicity, and immigration status. So imagine that. You've got a $5 million advertising budget, and $2.5 million of that can only be spent with media outlets based on race and ethnicity and immigration status. That is insanity. He supports and has aggressively tried to have Israel's economy destroyed through the BDS movement. He wants a $30 an hour minimum wage, and of course, he wants to defund the cops. So, yeah. I believe that this guy could actually help the Republicans because the Republicans can brand him as really an extension of where the Democrat Party is right now. I mean, listen to what Bernie Sanders had to say about it.
And it certainly has turned its back on working people. Will the Democratic leadership learn from his campaign? I doubt it. I think they would rather go down with the Titanic than give up the fact that they are captains of the boat.
So I don't know, Joan, what do you think? Should the Republicans try to really pin this guy as an example of how incredibly far left the Democrat Party has gone?
I think the Democrats need to wake up. Mm-hmm. They really do. He's frightening. This guy is frightening.
Well, and I think that is why John Fetterman says that it is Christmas in July for the GOP. And the things that he stands for are just horrendous. And you do have, by the way, Andy Ogle, have you heard what Andy Ogle wants to do?
Uh-oh. What now?
Republican Representative Andy Ogles of Tennessee has called for New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani to be denaturalized and deported.
Is that a thing? Can you denaturalize somebody?
Well, apparently you can. At least Andy Ogles says you can. He was born in Uganda to Indian parents. He's lived in New York City since he was 7 years old, became a U.S. citizen in 2018. On Thursday, Ogles called Mamdani Little Muhammad in a post to X, adding that the mayoral hopeful is an anti-Semitic, socialist, communist who will destroy the great city of New York. He needs to be deported, Ogles said, adding, which is why I am calling for him to be subject to denaturalization proceedings. The Tennessee lawmaker attached photos of a letter he sent to Attorney General Pam Bondi requesting that the Department of Justice investigate whether Mamdani should be denaturalized on the grounds that he may have procured U.S. citizenship through willful misrepresentation or concealment of material support for terrorism. Mamdani is, of course, pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas, anti-Israel. And the Daily Dan poll, watch us on YouTube if you would. The Daily Dan poll, KGB, how did we word it exactly?
We worded it basically. Do you think I'm gonna? We've said his name multiple times. I'm gonna butcher it. Do you think Zohran Mamdani? God, I am so bad at this name. Yeah, even though you've said it 5 times, I'm like, when I read it,
it's all right.
My brain goes numb. Is good for the Republican Party, and 69% say yes.
Yeah,
31% no.
The Republicans, as we all know, Republicans are really bad on messaging.
Oh wait, we forgot to give you a guess.
I guess 69%.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's cheating.
It's his show.
Sorry, it's my show.
We both have to say.
What?
5:54.
Oh, I forgot. I forgot. It's National Morning News starring Joan Jones. I forgot. That's the name of the show.
Anyway, it's 5:54 and the star of the show, Joan Jones. Has the news at 6. Joan.
You know, it's really hot outside, and there is one electric company around here that says they're going to turn the lights off this weekend. We'll tell you what's happening there. Also, this morning, something to watch out for. There is a mass layoff that is scheduled for today in the federal government. In fact, it's scheduled for this morning. We've got details on that coming up here in the news at 6 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.